Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organizations. Each and every episode, we sit down with experts from various fields from around the world, just like you're grabbing a coffee with them, to dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So go grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. Well, how do you free yourself from the endless tasks that keep you from the work you actually love? I actually thought of this on Sunday this last week as I was catching up on all of those endless tasks so I could start the week off with a bang. But if you're like many leaders, entrepreneurs, you're buried under emails, scheduling, admin, busy work, trying to figure out all the details. Even once a few months ago, I actually emailed our guest and asked if she would help me with a question I had for Kajabi. So there's just details upon details. Well, on today's episode of the Speak with People podcast, we're going to dive into how we can help reclaim our time and focus on what matters most. Well, I'm Jason Raitz, and my guest is Molly Rose Speed. She's founder of the Virtual Assistant Academy, Virtual Assistant Management. She's helped many leaders and virtual assistants build flexible, thriving careers. She has been there for a ton of leaders. I love following her on LinkedIn and appreciate that she's taken the time to be on the podcast today. Molly, welcome to the Speak with People podcast.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be chatting with you and your audience today.
Absolutely. Well, hey, before we dive in and hit some of these questions, why don't you give us just the 30,000 foot view of your story, who you are, what you do, what's kind of got you to this place?
Yeah. So 14 years ago, I was 23 years old. I was on my second corporate career job, and I realized this was not the path for me. And was very scared, quit my job, and became what we now know as a virtual assistant. But back then, it wasn't what it is today. It was, right? We weren't working virtual. Zoom wasn't how we did business. So I just learned everything I possibly could working for some really amazing entrepreneurs, speakers, authors, that kind of industry. And it snowballed into teaching people how to do what I do and create virtual operations businesses. A lot of military spouses, that's my market. That's what I am as well. And then along came all the business owners asking, how do I get your certified virtual assistants? How do I get help? And so it kind of created this business that I didn't see coming out of all of this.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. Yeah, you're right. 14 years ago, I mean, it was how would we get anything done if you're not right there?
Yeah, exactly. And someone else is going to check your email? No way.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. So let's just jump right in. I mean, okay, so if you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader, kind of thinking through, how do I know if I'm at the right spot or the right place in my business to bring on a virtual assistant?
Yeah, I think there's two things to think about. There's time and there's money. So if you've gotten to a point in your business where you have the resources to start to outsource and you're making enough that you can bring on that person, certainly go and do that, because you're losing your capacity in the highest zone of genius, I like to say. Borrowed that buzzword, I'm sure. To do the things that you're uniquely gifted to do by continuing to do them. So those things need to be outsourced. But also, if you run out of time to start doing the things that you're really brilliant at in your business, it's time to bring in that person to do the nitty gritty and the follow up that keep the engine running behind you. And so I find that people kind of hit that tipping point, and that's when it becomes time to start hiring. And a lot of times it's the VA is the first hire, because they can kind of be a jack of all trades to take some things off your plate.
Wow. Okay. So talk to us about, you talked about military spouses. Do the VAs you work with, are they, because I know I have a few entrepreneur friends who have hired VAs from all around the world.
Yeah.
So is this kind of a new thing, or has it kind of been around for a while?
Yeah, so definitely, and even myself, I've hired overseas support, and that's a great avenue. It's been around for years. Once I kind of got into this world, I realized, wow, people are doing this. People are offering their services online and doing this even at the virtual assistant level, and then U.S. based virtual assistants, kind of a uh, different caliber, I'd say, especially if you're a US based business owner. These are people that are going to kind of come in alongside you in your business. I end up getting a lot of personal information from clients, like credit card information or personal, birth information, right? As we're doing things and filling out forms that you wouldn't necessarily do to an overseas VA. So I really tapped into this market of military spouses because they're displaced. We're living in a lot of times small towns around the country with college degrees or not, and a lot of talent. And it's a beautiful career for this demographic.
Well, and especially with the rate of how much you guys move,
Hmm.
being able to do that. I was just speaking in Vacaville, California, and there's a giant
Okay.
Air Force base there, and met lots of Air Force folks, and was like, "Yeah, I got a year and a half before I move again," and just
Yeah,
all all of that movement. And here in Tampa, we have a big Air Force base as
you
well.
do.
But
Yeah.
yeah, pretty incredible. Okay, talk to the leader for a second, who's just like, okay, how do I? They have a hard time giving up
Yeah.
stuff, details. Like, how do I release that to
Yeah,
someone?
I understand that too. I hired my virtual assistant a few years ago, and I was like, "Oh, this is what they're talking about. I get it." Um, so I can certainly speak to. I'm very honest there. We created these businesses. They're our baby in a lot of ways, right? From everything from setting up our websites and our email accounts and figuring it out. So what I like to start new business owners that are outsourcing to an assistant with is kind of creating that master list of all the things that you do
Mm,
and you need to get off your plate, right? All the things you do, and then circle all the things only you have to do. The rest needs to start getting outsourced and prioritizing what's the most painful or the thing that you're really incompetent at doing, or the thing that's really time consuming. And then doing it in baby steps, just take 3, maybe 5 tasks and start there, knowing there's a much longer tail to this that they're being hired for, but kind of just build that trust, build that rapport, get to know the assistant that you're hiring. I hear so many times business owners, they don't meet with their VA on a weekly basis. It's like check in for 15 minutes, humanize it, right? Get on
hmm.
Zoom, ask how their weekend was, and that builds trust too.
Oh
And
yeah.
and just little by little, you start to feel the relief, and you're like, oh, my business ran without me today and I didn't have to do anything. And those are the times when things will start to catapult for you.
Boy, that's powerful. I remember probably 10 years ago, I had an assistant, and I traveled a lot, and all the time in my calendar, there'd be just fun things that would pop up, reminders in the airport, don't forget to buy water, all this kind of stuff. And then I had transitioned and started something new and didn't have an assistant anymore. And I got to the airport and I was sitting down and I'm like, wait a minute, I forgot everything because I
You relied
relied
on it.
on my assistant who put everything in there.
Yeah, well, that's a good one. That's a whole nother level.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a it was a different deal. Yeah, if you've done much of the Enneagram, or if you've ever heard of it, I'm like a
Hmm.
4, so the creative, like my office here is, pictures everywhere, and I just like to, I've got big giant whiteboards, and so I love detail. I love the 30,000 foot strategic details, but the everyday, oh yeah, I forgot that receipt.
Yeah.
Like I just spoke to 1,000 people, but dang it, those
Yeah.
receipts, like,
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. You need an Enneagram two. We're the helpers. A lot of VAs are Enneagram twos.
yes, absolutely. So then you started an academy. So then you certify folks. So when, when we come to you and, get a VA, they've kind of gone through your certification process.
Yes, yes, and it's twofold. We teach our assistants how to not only run a business, you know, their own contracts and invoicing, which is beneficial to the business owner hiring them. They're very organized, and that they're coming to you organized, and how to onboard a client and communicate and the project management tools and all the things that we use in our toolkit as business owners, but then also the tech side. So core competencies of what most business owners are stressing out about. And you mentioned them in the intro, email management and scheduling and travel booking and calendar. I said scheduling, but even just managing the nitty gritty and
Yeah.
confirming appointments, email marketing and setting up broadcasts and some social media work. And there's more, but kind of the basics of that. And then the softwares that go along with it, the popular ones that everyone's asking for these days.
That's amazing. Listen, if I get a VA, I just want to make sure they know Microsoft Publisher, because
Microsoft Publisher.
the clip art from Publisher was just genius.
I'm like, is that around? You're joking.
In
I'm like, about to
05,
write
it was
down.
incredible.
Now we have Canva.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's just insane. So you talked about it a little bit in your story, but was there a moment where, were you sitting like in your corporate job and this kind of idea was birthed, or, what was the kind of genesis story, a little bit more nitty gritty of how,
Starting this.
yeah.
I did it blind. I don't take risks. I'm not a risky person. I'm pretty normal, Um, and I remember far too many days. I was working in a hospital system as a financial analyst in my own office. It was cool. I was like, okay, I'm going to go get my MBA. I'm going to ride the ranks of healthcare, and I'm going to do this. And I just started to kind of think through. I started getting into personal development at a young age, thank goodness. And I'm like, this isn't how I want to spend my days. I was commuting 50 minutes to work, had to be there at 8, had to leave at 5. There was no budging. I'm like, this isn't what I want. And I thought my husband would be traveling around. Coincidentally, we've never been restationed, which is really rare in 15 years. But I had that in my mind. How am I going to keep this career? So I just quit cold turkey, and he was on a deployment, and he came home and we got married. He's like, okay, you're unemployed, getting married. And he's like, 4 to 5 months, got to figure this out, Molly Rose. And within a few months, someone had posted on social media that they were looking for a crowdfunding campaign manager for a student loan documentary. And I was like, okay, I can figure that out. And I applied for it and I got it. And I did. We raised $75,000. The film was on CNBC. It was so great. And that one opportunity, by answering that one post that a friend had posted, I became the assistant to the founder of the documentary, and then did really well for him. And then it referred, and then it referred. And that's kind of how it just started to grow. And I didn't do it on purpose. And that was really cool. And then creating the academy was military spouses were seeing what I was doing. I was traveling the world. I was working remote, making my own money. And they kept asking, how do I do what you do? How do I do what you do? So it came out of a mission to help people, and then turned into what it is today.
Wow. Just
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
When did you become like a Kajabi czar
Yeah.
expert?
Yes. So Kajabi is my sweet spot now. I still offer client work in that. About 7 years ago, I started using the software, and I just absolutely fell in love with it, and have become an expert. I take contracts from them, and I work. All my clients use it now. So yeah, about 7 years in running.
That's incredible.
Yes, it's the best. If no one knows what that is, it's an all-in-one software. So gone are the days where we have to connect a WordPress to a MailChimp to a Stripe to a Lead Pages to get something done. It's all in one subscription.
Yeah, it's something else. I dream of the day of being able to hire you or someone like you
Yes,
to look
please.
at because we have so much stuff in our Kajabi, and my brain doesn't always work with the soft. Like, it takes me, like when I emailed you last month, I was like, I know the answer is simple here, but for some reason it's just not, it's just not catching up.
Yeah, it's different. That's why we're, different. You're the visionary and I'm the integrator, right? That's where we would fit together.
Yeah, no, but Kajabi's been amazing for us, and being able to figure it out. I don't feel like I've, tapped into even 25% of its potential. We've used it a ton on the content side, but now we need to really get the income side going much
Yes.
more.
Yes.
with it. Because I'll follow people like Graham Cochran. I don't know if you've heard of Graham
Oh
Cochran.
yeah. Yeah. I met him a few
And
times.
he's just like, yeah, I work an hour a week and make $1 million an hour. And I'm like, Graham, how are you doing this?
Yeah. Teaching people how to use Kajabi. That's his thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many YouTube channels that have made a life out of just teaching people how to use Kajabi, which is incredible.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's changed my life.
So with your VAs, then are there like Kajabi certified people as well that know that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I actually just launched a course at the beginning of the year called Kajabi Mastery, and it's my take on teaching people how to use Kajabi the way I do and run a business around it. Because far too many people are coming to me saying, "Can you help me? Can you help me?" And I want to feed that into my VAs. So we now have a certification for Kajabi of our own.
Wow, just incredible.
Yeah,
Just
it's really
amazing.
fun.
Let's talk about for a second the the communication between a VA and
Mm,
their team, because especially if they're not depending on, like you talked about earlier, if they're not doing the one-on-ones, how does that communication work best? What are does the VA kind of from the beginning say, hey, this is what is your best way
how
to
it goes.
communicate? Just curious, when it comes to that communication.
Yeah, this is a great question because it's probably the number one place I see breakdown. I see breakdown in onboarding from the get go, and then this communication piece. So I'm going to say what not to do first. So what we're trying to avoid, and it happens probably in people that are listening, you might be the one doing it. So catch yourself here. So you're emailing, you're on GChat, you're on a Zoom, you're texting, you're voice memoing, you're in Slack, you're in Asana, all of those things from one client, this has happened to me, are coming in. So it's almost impossible for someone like me to do my job successfully because we're all over the place. I'm missing things. It
Right.
doesn't make any sense. So what I recommend, and I teach our assistants and business owners when they come in, we help kind of onboard, is picking 3 streams of communication. So that might look like we're using Asana for tasking. It's a brilliant project management tool that you can use for free if you've never heard of it. And then I have an SOS kind of channel where this has to be done. That can be either be a text or a Voxer, which is a voice memo app. You kind of pick. And those are really for times where the business owner or the VA is like, I need an answer now, or my flight just got delayed. Please help me, that kind of thing. And then, of course, what I recommended from the beginning 15 minutes face to face, or at a bare minimum, a phone call before noon on a Tuesday. That's kind of what I recommend. So pick your project management tool for tasking, super organized, and there's transparency and accountability and due dates. Your SOS channel for in the moment, have to have an answer, and then your meetup call at the beginning of the week for both of you to kind of what's on your plate, what's on my plate, as that would go. That's what I see happen. And when that works, things go very well.
Yeah, communication it tends to help in relationships.
Very much so, right? That's what it's all about. And
But
we're getting bad at it now.
but we get busy, and things pile up, and then you're like, oh yeah, I guess we haven't really ever talked about that. I run into it all the time, and a lot of the training I do is client communication, and even the simplest of questions. Hey, how would you like me to communicate with you? Because we're all wired differently. I'm Gen
Yeah.
X, and so for whatever reason, Gen X loves email, and
Yeah.
so I could shoot off 24 emails and feel good about myself, but the other person is like, the onslaught is just way too much. And so even if we take the time at the beginning to say, hey, what's the best way for each of us to communicate, powerful things happen.
Absolutely. Completely. Yeah. I agree with that.
So shifting for a second, just because you're a successful business owner, entrepreneur, you've oh goodness, got your hands in a bunch of things, help out tons of people. Was there a moment in your journey where you didn't know if it was going to work? You were about to throw in the towel. I know all entrepreneurs and business owners, we've only experienced success and never had those, doors shut or contracts fall through. But just curious, if you were ever at that place and how you, navigated that.
Yeah, I don't have a specific, like, this is exactly what happened. I've had two instances, though, I'll share real quick. So, probably 5 years ago now, I feel like we time traveled in 5 years. I always say 5 years, and it's been seven or something. So take that as it will. Um, but I remember looking at Indeed jobs. Like, I'm done with this. I just want to go to work, turn it on, leave work, turn it off. Sometimes I say, I just want to work at Starbucks. When you leave, you can't make the coffee anymore, right? And so I've had a lot of those moments, but the payoff at the end of being a business owner for me is so great. I can control my income and I can control my time, and that's the most important thing that you don't get when you're employed on a W-2. So I always kind of just had to take a step back and come back to why I was doing what I'm doing, and kind of push through. Or in most of those cases, it was a client that I probably needed to let go, or kind of shift off of my plate, and just
Mm.
kind of have those tough conversations to get myself out of that situation. So, and then coming out of COVID, I'd say last year, you know, I think a lot of people have been talking about burnout. We all came from this kind of lull, and all of a sudden we had to pick it back up. It took us about a year to get back into it, and definitely had those feelings and moments that I don't think business owners are. I think more and more of us are talking about that. So I had to kind of start setting boundaries and figuring out, is this what I want to be doing? Is this how I want to continue working? And reassessing how I run my business has kind of been my focus the past year or so, and it's getting much better. But I haven't looked at a job post in over 2 years, so that's good.
Yeah, so is
Yeah,
it just you? Did you have a partner? Did you, bring in
yeah.
people? I mean, how did you start it?
Yeah, so I have a business partner for virtual assistant management. She's brilliant. She does all my placements, has a background in HR, and she does the people side, right? I'm very technical. And so I couldn't do it without her. And then we have an assistant on my team, and then we also have all of our contractors who are VAs. So I can always tap into their talent, or mostly we put them with our clients that come in for the placement side.
So
Yeah.
I'm not like a comic book person, but for whatever reason, as you were explaining that, my mind went to you have like your own Justice League that you're like, this team of experts. It's like, okay, we got to do this. Who's on it? Like,
I love that. Yeah.
you know, it's just pretty
Yeah, that's
amazing.
cool. I went to do a little campaign of superheroes for the VAs.
Yeah, no, that absolutely. That would be that's incredible when you're able to do that. What have you seen? Just any success stories in any of your clients who, maybe were hesitant and then brought on a VA, or you worked with Kajabi, or they were able to see something that they had not experienced yet.
Yes. So I have a lot of clients who have bad VA stories that come to us. They're like, I've been burned, that happens a lot. So we take caution with any placement we do, but we're really hypersensitive to those. So one great success story, we had a client. He was a public speaker, and he was like 90K in accounts receivable, had not collected because he just wasn't organized. He was on to the next gig. So when a VA went in and started, getting a system in place for invoicing and tracking, and making, just simply picking up the call saying, hey, you owe, and getting the payment through, be a check or ACH or whatever it was. That was a huge win, right? He's calling us like, oh, I just paid for my VA for at least 2.5 years, right? Or whatever he's going to use her for.
Right.
So that was great. We're like, cha-ching, okay. But then just to see that relationship, it's been years that they've been working together, and all he has to do is show up and speak. The assistant does everything else. So
Wow.
it's really cool, right? And then we've had other VAs or other clients who are hiring in for an agency role, right? So it's not just solopreneurs. Sometimes agencies come to us, and it's an assistant that's coming onto a team, and they've had great success because in those you're kind of making a people match, right? Because you're working with 5 others. So to see those, like, oh my gosh, we just love having this person. We've had our VAs been flown out to Scotland. They've gone to events with clients. They've gone to Major League Baseball and football games and suites with clients. So that's
Wow.
kind of cool to see them take care of our VAs too, if it works out.
Yeah, absolutely. I would, boy, I'd love that, the 90,000 problem right now. That's a
Uh-huh.
great.
in AR collected.
Yeah, but I get it. I mean, it's amazing. I think of, I'm sort of on my own. I have a 21-year-old son who does our graphics and editing, and we air 2 podcasts a week and a blog post and a weekly email and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But so he kind of handles making sure all that happens. But on the other side, you just forget, the tax filing forms and this and getting in. A lot of the work I do as a speaker, I'm sponsor since I speak in the financial world. A lot of times what happens is assurance companies will sponsor
Yeah.
speakers for bank events. And so SOWs have to be written and signed, and then an invoice has to be sent. It's just a never ending. And then all the receipts for the travel and,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
then
So having someone systematize that and own it, all you do is get on the plane and they
right,
tell you to get your water.
right, right. Go over your notes, get those things ready. That's just incredible. So, I mean, it's not off. I mean, the, it's awesome to be able to talk to someone who's, you're a successful business owner. You've been doing this. What are a couple of maybe, Molly's words of wisdom to business owners in that 0 to 5 year range? They're just, it feels like every day's up a hill.
Hmm.
What's your words of wisdom to them as they're, continue to march forward?
Yeah, I'm big on everything can be put into a process. So if you find yourself doing things over and over again, like you mentioned, showing for a speaking engagement, all the things that you have to do for that as an example, um, you know, I'm Asana is my gem. If you don't have a project management tool, it is get one. Don't continue to have pieces of paper like I do still all over my desk, but I have it digitally where my team can see it too. Um, and getting things organized and into a system is super helpful. So if you find yourself repeating things, that's very outsourceable. I know that's not a word, but that's something that can be pushed out very quickly because it's repeatable actions that someone can take off of your plate. So don't think that anything is too small. Kind of start figuring out all the things that you're doing that are just weighing you down. I always say when we started our businesses, we did it for a specific purpose. I want to be a coach. I want to be a speaker. I want to be a financial advisor. I want to sell real estate. And what we didn't realize is we have to do bookkeeping and social media and a website and be on podcasts and go speak and business development and close the client and send the agreement and coach them when they're mad and all the things, right? And we don't have to do all of those things, right? 80% of that can be handled by someone when the time is right, but putting
Wow.
the system in place now is very helpful. So the more organized you are, the easier it is for someone to come in and support you. And last thing, it doesn't always have to be a person, right? Technology, my 14 years, as everyone can say, has been insane. So use it. It doesn't just have to be AI. It can be templates. It can be a bookkeeping system, whatever it is for you. But start figuring out: can a system take this over, or does it need to be a person? And make the appropriate steps to make that happen.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's just absolutely brilliant. Brilliant.
Great.
Let me ask you a couple rapid fire questions before we wrap it up. We're building this online resource with all of our guests' ideas just to kind of be a place where people can kind of get inspired and get new ideas. Is there a speaker? I mean, you work with speakers. Is there maybe you can't call one out because you don't want anybody to get offended, but is there a speaker that you listen to that you just keep recommending? You tell other people you've got to listen to their stuff.
So I am a huge fan of Scott Galloway. Prof G is his podcast. He's a marketing professor out of NYU. I listen to every word he says in my ears all week.
So then with that, is that the podcast you'd recommend as well then?
Yes, 1000%. Yep. And he's also a speaker. Oh, podcast was a question, huh? Yeah. Yep. That's the one I listen to all the time. In
Okay.
fact, the only one.
And then is there a book? Every leader's got to read. If you don't read another book, this is the book you have to read.
Rocket Fuel. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
Okay. It is if you're a leader working with someone on your team, you'll understand that you're likely the visionary and you need implementers, integrators to execute. And it's how those two things work together in Genius.
Wow. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Well, we'll put that in the communication library. And
Awesome.
Molly, this has been huge. Let me, I guess, ask one other question, because I know if I'm thinking it, some of our listeners are. So do you guys, for VAs, work in packages then? Is it like, a couple hours, many hours,
Yeah.
or however it works? Credits,
So
however it works.
I would say if you're on the VA search looking for a virtual assistant, you're going to see tons of different options. A lot of them are, you buy a bulk amount of hours and it gets sent out and anyone can do the job. You just put the task in the thing. What we do is kind of a boutique virtual assistant service, right? We put a match together. We do personality tests. Like, we pay attention to who we're placing together. And it's a fractional virtual assistant. So you can hire them for as little as 5 hours a week, 20 hours a month on average, or up to full time if that's where you're going with it. So you can get started for 20 hours is kind of where we're at, because it's a good energy exchange, right? They're gonna invest that thought process and their week into you, so it's worth at least that.
Wow. So it's not like a good, better, best scale. Like,
No, don't do that. Please don't do that, people.
you forgot to post the second half of my social media. Well,
Right.
you got the
I
good
ran
package.
Yeah, you got the good.
That could be a fun commercial if you guys ever
That could
do,
be. I love that, actually.
ever do. It's like the ChatGPT images that, put a
Or
third
spelled
arm
wrong.
or leave off a word, or, those kind of things. Well, you only
Yes.
paid for the, tier 17. So.
Right. You only prompted me to spell the t-shirt right, not the hat.
I love it. Well, this has been incredible. Thank you. Love your energy and your brilliance. Where's the best place we can send our listeners to find you online and connect with you?
Yep, mollyrosespeed.com is my website, and that's my name on all socials. You can find me. And then virtualassistantmanagement.com is our placement agency. You can book a free discovery call if you're interested and at a point where you need support. Happy to chat with anyone in that position.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. This has been incredible, and we'll put all of that information in the show notes and in all the other different areas. So, Molly, thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Speak with People podcast. It means the world to us when you share this episode. Thanks for liking, subscribing, or following the podcast. That really does help the podcast get into more ears and into more leaders listening. Also, don't forget, we have 2 exciting resources for you. The first is go to Facebook and join the Speakers Group. This is a community designed for leaders who want to grow their communication skills. Also, go to speakwithpeople.com/skills library to access the Communication Skills Library. It is an online resource chock filled with resources that will inspire you and transform you and grow your communication skills. Thanks again for being a part of the listening community. We cannot wait for the next episode.